The recent IMSA race at VIR was a thriller, with action up and down the GT field in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. This race gave us winners that we had never seen before this year, and it certainly was a welcome surprise. So this is the race review, detailing everything that happened during the 2024 Michelin GT Challenge at VIR. This event would not feature any prototype cars in the main race, meaning that one of the entries in GTD Pro would likely win overall. Starting on pole position for this 2-hour and 40-minute race would be Madison Snow in the number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW, and he would lead the field to green to start this event. The BMW M4 GT3 would continue to lead this race into the first lap, quickly followed by the first of the Multimatic Fords and the 2 Pratt Miller Corvettes. Meanwhile, in GTD, it was the Korkhoff Preston Motorsports Mercedes that took the lead from the Proton Competition Ford, as Mercedes led in the GTD class. Speaking of Ford, the Mustang GT3 was the car that impressed me the most across this event. The car was the lightest entry when it came to the balance of performance, and this was quickly turning out to be Ford's best weekend this year in IMSA so far. The number 55 Proton Ford even qualified on pole position in GTD, and the 2 Multimatic Fords were even challenging for the overall win in the GTD Pro category. As the event progressed with the number 1 BMW in front while being pursued by the number 64 Multimatic Ford, there was a strange occurrence in the top class when Pfaff Motorsports McLaren had a problem when the door came open. While the door eventually did close, I'm sure it was quite the distraction for driver Ollie Jarvis, but thankfully he didn't lose a position in class. One of the things that was great to see in this race was how close and competitive the racing was across the event at VIR. Most of the GT cars were close together, and the lead battles were very intense. I think this race reminded us that while the main GTP class and LMP2 class are very entertaining, the racing in the GT field is also incredible, and that having a GT-only event is something IMSA definitely needs to keep having on the calendar. Now, I do want to point out that later on there was an incident in GTD Pro involving Roxy, the AO Racing Porsche, and Vassar Sullivan's number 14 Lexus, which forced the RCF GT3 into a spin. In fact, it was not turning out to be a great day for either of those two teams, as we would soon see in the GTD class with the Lexus car in that category towards the end of the race. Around halfway into the event, there was drama for the number 3 Corvette, which at the time was in a podium position, when the car slowed while on a lap. British racer Alexander Sims thankfully brought the car back to the pits, but Pratt Miller Motorsports would eventually have to retire the Corvette Z06 GT3R, although the team would still have a car in the race, the number 4 entry, which was still in a position to secure a successful result. Meanwhile, the number 65 Ford Mustang was forced to come down pit row. This was due to a refueling penalty, which caused Dirk Mueller to have to serve a drive-through penalty. But it's worth noting that this Mustang was not the only car to receive a penalty during this race, because later on the number 23 Heart of Racing Aston Martin would serve a penalty for a similar thing to the Ford Mustang, which was devastating because the Aston Martin was sitting in 2nd overall at the time and searching for their 2nd race win of the season following its win at Watkins Glen. Now, with just over 30 minutes remaining of this race, there was a big issue for the number 70 Inception McLaren, as smoke poured from the back of the 720S GT3 Evo, forcing the driver to ground the car to a halt. Thankfully, the driver was okay, but this did bring out a caution period, which would bunch up the field for the final 20 or so minutes left of this race. When the racing resumed, Madison Snow got a great start and led in the number 1 BMW, quickly followed by the number 64 Ford Mustang once again. But the racing was happening just behind them, as Dirk Mueller tried to get both of the GTD Pro Fords into the podium places, but eventually had to settle for 4th behind the number 23 Aston Martin, which had climbed back up to 3rd. Elsewhere, the GTD field was having quite the showdown, with multiple cars switching positions, especially for 3rd place. For a moment, it was the Proton Competition Ford in 3rd place, but then it went off track. Then it was the number 96 Turner Motorsports BMW, which won last time out at Road America, followed by the number 78 Forte Lamborghini, which took the position. The fact was, the grid in GTD was definitely showing off some fantastic action. However, as I pointed out earlier, it was not turning out to be a great day for Vasser-Sullivan Lexus, as towards the end of the race, the number 12 entry went off track and into the wall. Thankfully, the crash didn't result in the Lexus having to retire, and driver Parker Thompson was able to get the car back out on track. But at the end of the race, it would be disappointing as the car would finish 18th overall and around 10th in class. As the race neared its conclusion, up at the front, Mike Rockenfeller in the number 64 Multimatic Ford tried to challenge for the win, but ultimately wouldn't be able to challenge Madison Snow, who would bring the number 1 BMW across the line in 1st position, and he and co-driver Brian Sellers would finally return Paul Miller Racing to victory lane within IMSA. And this was not only their first win in 2024, but their first in the GTD Pro category, since moving from GTD. In fact, the number 1 BMW's last win came 1 year ago at this very track in 2023. But this year, they would stand on the overall top step, followed by the number 64 Ford, which as I explained earlier showed off great pace, with the number 23 Heart of Racing Aston Martin completing the GTD Pro podium. Meanwhile, the GTD win went to Korkhoff Preston Motorsports. Finally, their number 32 Mercedes-AMG GT3 took a win in 2024, which allowed Mercedes to also grab their 5th win this season in GTD, proving that the German marque is clearly having the best season in this class among all 11 manufacturers competing. Completing the podium in this category was the number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin in 2nd, and the number 78 Forte Racing Lamborghini completed the top 3. As for the IMSA Championship standings, heading out of the race in Virginia, there is of course no change across the GTP or LMP2 categories, so it won't be talking about those. As for GTD Pro though, the number 77 AO Racing Porsche is still at the top, followed by the number 23 Heart of Racing Aston Martin, and moving into the top 3 is the number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW after their win at VIR. In 4th is the number 14 Vasser-Sullivan Lexus, and completing the top 5 in this category is the number 3 Pratt Miller Corvette. Meanwhile, in GTD, it's the number 57 Windward Racing Mercedes still in the lead, followed by the number 96 Turner Motorsports BMW, and the number 32 Korkhoff Preston Motorsports Mercedes is in 3rd. In 4th is the number 34 Conquest Racing Ferrari, and jumping into the top 5 is the 2nd Heart of Racing entry, the number 27 GTD Aston Martin. So that completes the race review from the Michelin GT Challenge at VIR in 2024. IMSA's GT-only event is now complete, and there's just 2 rounds left of the season, and both are Michelin endurance rounds, with the first one at Indianapolis. What did you think about this race at Virginia International Raceway though? As always, let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching. For more content on endurance racing such as the WEC and IMSA, consider subscribing if you haven't already. On screen, you'll find some suggested videos to watch next. For now though, that's it for me. You'll hear from me next in the following video.